Hi, everybody. Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. I'm glad that you're here with me today to talk about life, leadership, and legacy. Okay, today's episode, I have a very, very special guest. But before I introduce her, if you have not done it yet, go and subscribe today to Leading with Lee on all podcasting platforms and on YouTube. It will be a great opportunity for you to learn and grow in your leadership. I got a very, 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 very special guest today. I'm super excited to interview her. She is Jackie the Educator. She's on here today. Welcome, Jackie, to Leading with Lee.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here and chat with you today, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie. So, I just want to kind of jump right in. First of all, how are you doing? I know we're kind of gotten to the middle of the year now. People are gotten their feet underneath them, but we're still kind of dealing with a lot of transition right now. You know, most people when this episode comes out, will kind of be moving a little bit out of the pandemic in some ways, but you never know. I mean, cases are still going up and down. But how are you doing, and how are you navigating this time?
Yeah, it's been such an up and down with the pandemic. We never know what's going to happen next. I mean, we have seen some craziness, but, I'm again hopeful that we are moving out of it. And I believe that, this will be a good time for a lot of people to reintroduce themselves to the world. I know we have been in hiding, but, it's time for us to come out. And so I'm definitely excited about that. I've been having a lot of good things happen behind the scenes. For me, it's been a really good season just for planning and, getting things in order because again, BCI grew so quickly. It just for me was like overwhelming the amount of like support and people that wanted to be a part and, the momentum that was pushing me, the pressure almost was a little high. So a lot of people were just so excited about what we were doing that, for me at first, I think before pandemic, we were going so fast to be in person conferences and meetups. It's like literally people had so many high expectations, but I'm so glad God gave me this season just to kind of like get it in order, like settle it. And again, now, I think we're ready for what comes next.
That's awesome. I think people don't realize that structure and organization is a priority for any organization to actually grow. You can have a great idea all day, but if there is no structure and no organization, it will not be able to sustain. I literally was listening to Roland Martin today, and he was talking about that,
Yeah.
how great organizations literally they have been able to sustain because they had the right structures in place to be able to do that. Let's talk about you a little bit because I think from your story that is where all this stuff comes from, right? You mentioned BCI, which is Black Christian Influencers, which I am a part of, which is such a great organization. But in the little bit I know about you, you're a YouTuber, you're an entrepreneur, you're the founder of this great organization, BCI. How are you? How did you turn your story into a platform to impact people?
Yeah, and that's good. I think for me, I didn't plan on having a platform, honestly. What I initially was trying to do was reach students. I was a director of diversity before I was
Cool.
an influencer. And I found out that actually it was more beneficial to have a presence online for students to listen to you. And so, I do whatever is effective. I've always been drawn to whatever is most effective. And so I was being a non-traditional instructor and faculty member by just trying to impact them when they weren't in the classroom. And I found that it was actually working. And in that process of building my platform for my students, that's why Jackie the Educator is my name. I realized that, wait, I've been impacting more people. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just the students I was with that were actually joining my following and listening to what I was adding. It was people I never met before across the country and the world, and yeah, that's just how it happened. I literally was just trying to reach my students. I was like, okay, since they like people online, they like to look at Cardi and all those people, they can get their
Right.
attention all day. Let me get
Right.
online and try to get their attention. And, from there, it was less what it grew into. Jackie the Educator, the platform. Before I even started my business, Jackie the Educator was an influencer. And so that's where I started.
Wow. It's something key that you said there. It wasn't intentional. I
Mhm.
think I think it's super important for people to hear and understand. Like as you share your story, you were just focusing on doing what you do and being yourself and fulfilling the purpose that is within you. And out of that came this mammoth of an organization that is impacting so many people. I think that that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Kind of staying in that lane. So you created this I've always wondered what was that like when you decided to start BCI because you said okay. I'm approaching this and I'm starting to impact my students. I want to connect with my students, and I realize that it's the internet age, so I have to do it this way. But how did that kind of leads you into saying, "Oh, well, I need to start an organization to connect this interesting group of individuals that I'm somewhat connected to." How did that come about?
It's such a real, like, I feel like not even an ordinary turn of events, like the process of me getting from being an influencer, starting to be effective with my students, to I eventually started to work at my father's church as a counselor. I was trying to build a counseling center
Mhm.
in the West Inglewood area. And so during that time, I was still an influencer with Jackie the Educator, but I also was full time trying to build a nonprofit. And so while working with contractors, I had a lot of free time in between, like dealing with contractors and stuff. And so I was like, man, you know what? I love being Jackie the Educator still, even though I'm not working at an institution. And I think I'm still ministering in a very non traditional way. And so when I realized that, I realized, like, man, but I don't know a lot of other people like me who aren't necessarily in the pulpit, but they are effective in ministry in their lane. Like I
Yeah.
have students, I have teachers that look towards me, and again, they value me because of my expertise and the way I present because it appeals to them. And so I'm like, man, I wonder if there are others out there like me, like
Yeah.
they're non traditionally being effective with what they're delivering. And that's where BCI really came from. I was like, I want to get these people together. Let's just brainstorm together. Let's help each other because there are so many different things happening online, and we need to know about it. We need to lift each other up. Other influencers, you look in other arenas and they're
Right.
helping each other, collaborating, sharing resources. But, Christians, I felt like we didn't have a space for that, especially for Christians of color, because a lot of times
Well,
we don't have the opportunities.
that's real.
So
That's real.
I literally wanted to create a space for us to come together. And again, for me, it's just literally the snowball. After putting them together in just a small group on Facebook, which is where I started, I realized, like, wait a minute, like, this might be something more. Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
started to snowball so much, and people were like, yeah, we need this, and we want something to do like this, and we would appreciate this. And I literally just listened to what people were saying they needed, and I developed the
Mhm.
business off of that. That's
Wow.
where BCI came from.
Wow. You That's a gem that people don't need to miss. You listen to the need and then you created something based on that. I think a
Yeah,
lot of times we are so presumptuous about what people need instead
we
of just
are.
asking questions and listening. That's so good. And I'm going to take that and I need to use that for the rest of my life. Um, I think that's so great, and you have been effective at it. Obviously, I mean, with BCI and all the other things that you're doing. So kind of share with people what does influence mean to you? Because I don't think that that is trivial. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence. It's about getting people to just follow what you're saying. Like, what does that look like to you, and what does that mean to you, Jackie?
Yeah, and I love that you asked that, because a lot of times people think that they aren't an influencer because it's not like what they've traditionally seen influencers portrayed as. But when
Right.
I talk about influencers, I literally mean people who have influence in different arenas. And influence is just they are respected, they're viewed for their opinions. People look to them for answers. And that for me is someone who has influence. And a lot of times, for us, we don't really recognize that we have influence. Like, in
Yes.
your job that you do that you may think is so small or unimportant, you have influence there. There are people who look to you for your opinion, and that is a space where only you can reach and only you
Right.
can be effective. And so that's what influence is about. It's not about having, the most popular person or having the most following or different people looking and trying to trend after you. No, it's about you being effective in your lane.
Right. Right.
That's influence.
Right. I think that that's powerful and potent, and I hope people will grab that. Like, it's so distracting sometimes to see that all these other people are doing what we perceive as being an influence. Because when we think about influencers, generally we're thinking about people that are like, "Hi, on my, I need you to buy this face mask
Yes.
for
Yep.
$29.95. If you go to the link on my page, that's what most people think influencers are.
Absolutely.
Social media influencers are people that sell products on social media, but they don't do exactly what you said, is believe that they have the capacity to make a difference. I think that's such
Mhm.
a great perspective. I think that pushes us to not become victims of the realities around us and actually start taking ownership.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
actually engage in the process of what we can do to make a difference in the world. I think that's so good. I appreciate you saying that. That's fantastic. So what advice would you give to people who are trying to figure that out? Because I think that there are people that are going to listen to this and say, "Oh, you know what? I have a skill set. I have some things that I'm good at. I have some things that I really know how to do, but I don't know how to use this mythological thing that you said that we have called influence." I literally just thought about SpongeBob, how when I was a kid, he did the hand thing and I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I had a whole moment just then, but but it's people are like, this is like unattainable. What would you say to people that are trying to figure out how to use their influence?
I think what I would tell them is don't try so hard. It's honestly
Yeah.
natural. A lot of times we overthink it and then we end up making it unnecessarily complicated. I'm a
Yeah.
big person who does that sometimes too, but I realize that influence doesn't have to be worked at when you naturally have it. Like you are
Ooh.
influencing when you do what you regularly do. Your life is an influence, and so I think about reality television before it was fake television.
Right.
A lot of those people would be now considered influencers, right? They didn't necessarily have a specific celebrity status or come from something that people would traditionally think of as being a celebrity, but they gained a lot of exposure and people look to them continually for things. And so
Right.
now when I think about our lives as influencers, our lifestyle is the actual work of an influencer. Like living and being you is what it's about. And so when we try to do too much, that's when we become non-effective. Literally,
Yeah.
it becomes work and people see it that way.
Yeah.
And then influencing has to be natural. Like that's the biggest thing I can tell people is that it has to be you and it has to be natural.
That's so much that's so much wisdom in what you just said. Because like I was talking to somebody about this recently. There are a lot of like strategies to grow your influence out there. Like you probably have seen it. But like if you do these five things, if you give this amount of money to such and such a way, you'll grow this amount, and I don't you brought up a powerful point that like all I hear you talking about is being authentic.
It's that simple.
Like being authentic is so important. What advice would you give to people who are struggling with that? Because I think a lot of people have not owned their story enough, especially people in general. We don't see ourselves as leaders. We don't see ourselves as influencers. We think that that is only for the few and only for the people that talk the most in conversations. What advice would you give to people to own their story and like really believe that they can impact people?
I think again, I just think a lot of times we overcomplicate it. And so, one thing that I did, which was very helpful, was that I had to accept me. And,
Yeah.
I think that's the first step for a lot of people that they don't really pay attention to. You probably think you have already accepted yourself, but if there are areas where you are still not confident in your testimony and you're holding back, then you haven't really accepted you. Being able to share yourself
Wow.
means being able to show where you've grown at, like those spaces where people can look and you not be self-conscious about,
Yeah.
you not doubting who you are and how you were created. All of that plays into it. And so a lot of times it's not necessarily people have a problem with being an influencer or showing up on social media, but it's that they haven't developed the confidence in themselves yet, and it shows. And
Wow.
there's an area that you have that is undeveloped that you need to focus on.
Wow.
And that's what, I think we need to get to, is that finding out, what is that for me. I talk to people all day when I coach them one on one, and we're talking about like their confidence, and so a lot of times I say, hey, well, you haven't created any videos yet. You haven't like even showed up, on
Yeah.
social media with, a video, which is honestly one of the most effective ways. And I listen to them, and then I hear really that they aren't confident in how they look. They are
Mm.
still feeling self-conscious in their body, their face, their appearance, and that is honestly work that has to be done in order for you to show up and to grow. It has to be. I believe that it's almost like a test from God. He sometimes give you levels, right? So you think about like those games that you play, and it's like, okay, you pass level 1, level 2, level 3. There's a level that you can't go past unless you pass it, especially when it comes to confidence. And
Wow.
so for me, I had to go through that. I'm not telling people anything that I didn't have to deal with. So you have to pass that level of having your own self-confidence, and that just means accepting all of yourself. That means accepting your skin. That means accepting your characteristics, your
Yes.
mannerisms,
Yes.
your nerdiness, all of that stuff. Like I had to fully just embrace it. I cannot change it. It is me. And when
Yeah.
I do that, I feel like honestly, it's just amazing to me how many people were like, wow, I've been waiting for someone like you to show up,
Yeah.
like it's again,
Yeah.
it's going to feel a need, and you just have to really trust the process with that.
Oh, that's so good. There's so many things that popped in my head as you were talking. Like so good. I think that people have to do exactly what you said. Like, oh, that confidence thing is so huge for people. And I know for me, I struggle with that.
Hmm.
Like, even with podcasting and vlogging, I have these moments where I'm literally like, do people really want to hear what I have to say? Like, can I really interview this person? Will this person say yes to me? That's when I tell you, there's so many moments where I have literally said, will this person say yes to me? And I then realize in that process, I'm devaluing my ability to connect with people.
Yeah.
And we often do that. We often live our lives in a space based on labels that have been placed on us from family, from environments we grew up in, all these different aspects. And it's so interesting and so powerful that you shared that, because what came to my mind immediately as you were talking was the fact that on YouTube you shared your story.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing the video and I'm being like, oh my God, like I need to go to therapy.
Hmm.
I need to have some conversations with some people because, and you just didn't share, you didn't edit it and it was cute and pretty. You shared the raw,
Yeah.
unadulterated, raw truth. Like you were just very honest. And that
Mhm.
honesty actually propel people like me to say, you know what? Actually, I need to deal with this stuff. Actually,
Mhm.
I need to walk through what it is that I need to walk through so that
Yeah.
I can really be motivated to move forward in my life. And once again, I said thank you before. I'm gonna say it on the podcast again. Thank you for being authentic enough to share your story like that, because you never know who you're touching. And I think that's something that people have to realize. They think that they just have to have a platform to do that, but all of us are touching somebody.
Yeah.
we're impacting or touching somebody. It may be our sibling, it may be our spouse, it may be our kids, it may be our cousin that live down the street, it may be that kid that always rides his bike down the street. Like, we can literally be impacting people, and I think that what you shared is so potent and so powerful. Just kind of staying right there, you kind of mentioned about the way you have pushed some of your clients to just post videos on social media.
Mhm.
You know, as someone who has figured out the, I think that there's a science to media.
Yeah, it's an evolving science.
It seems like there is a science to media. What are some ways that you have personally taken on to like grow your brand or grow BCI? Like, what are some strategies that you use to really push the organization forward, and also use for yourself to go forward and be who you want to be authentically?
Yeah, for me, I have never been a person who was afraid of stepping outside of the norm. I have always been a person who colors outside of the lines. And that is probably the biggest value for someone who's trying to be on social media, because there are so many people who are trying so hard to color inside the lines, thinking that that will get them, and some type of notoriety and value of people coming to them. But the reality is that there are too many of you coloring inside the lines.
Right.
So it needs people that will step out and be completely different, and for me, I think that's what I was able to do, and I keep doing it. It's never like one thing with social media. It's about being adaptive and growing and stepping and challenging yourself. I think that's what I do very well, is that I'll try new things. I will try anything and be okay with putting it out there and seeing responses, and again growing from that. Like, okay, y'all like that, okay, y'all didn't like that, that didn't work, okay, that did work though. Like, you really have to be a person who's okay with experimenting. And I feel
Yeah.
like that again is about confidence, because sometimes people like, I don't want to try nothing new because I'm gonna look stupid. If you're worried about looking stupid, then you probably won't see growth. That's the reality. You need to be
Well,
completely disconnected from other people's opinion during your season of trying to grow.
yeah.
Because if you're trying to hold on to what people think is good and what people think will work, then you'll never reach that new thing. People, honestly, when I started BCI and when I started even my personal Jackie the Educator page, there were people, I worked at a university, and professors that told me, like, you really shouldn't do that. That's not very professional. Like, you really need to separate your life and things. If you want to be tenure, if you want to become a professional in this space, you're going to really devalue yourself by stepping out of it and
Uh-huh.
doing something that we don't do, right? And that for me was a challenge, because I was like, I really wanted to be successful in higher education, and I wanted that. But what I realized too is that if it was effective, then it was good. And why
Yes.
are we bashing something?
Wait. You can't walk past that. Say that again. If it's effective, it's good.
If it was effective, it's good. That's the simple
Yes.
equation.
Yes. I'm
Effective
sorry.
equals good. And some people miss that, like, why are we trying so hard with something that's not effective and
Wow.
getting little to no results? But then the thing that is effective, but is not traditional, we disregard. I
Yep.
just was like, I can't understand it. Like,
Yep.
it made no sense. And having that attitude has really propelled me forward.
Wow. I mean, you just said something that literally is so potent. And I think that's going to encourage so many people to actually believe that they can do something different. Because some of us have become
Yeah.
paralyzed to systems.
Yes.
We have become paralyzed to not just, and when I say systems, I'm not just talking about literal structures like education or institutions. I'm talking about systems within our family, systems within our
Yep.
culture, systems within, I come from a specific city. Listen, I always rep that I'm from
All
Jackson,
that. Yeah.
Mississippi. Like, I'm from the South. There's a certain way people do things in the South. And I have to remind myself, actually, Lee, that's not necessarily the standard, and there might be something somebody has done a certain way before that may have been effective at one time, but it does not mean it has to be the same way now. Yeah.
Check this out, man. You could stand on your head right now during this podcast and do the whole podcast standing on your head. And that may be more effective with drawing people in than you standing and sitting. Now, I'm saying that because people will be like, why is he standing on his head? He looks crazy. He shouldn't be doing that. But then you look up and you have a million views and you
Right.
have people that are responsive and
Right.
listen to you say what you value is important just
Right.
from doing something like that. That's an example of how when you sometimes look silly to other people, but if it's effective, who are you talking to? Like, I'm
Yep.
being effective. I don't know what your goal is, but I think that's the problem, is that we're not looking to
Yes.
be effective. We're looking to be I don't know, just
Accepted.
invaluable to people. We want to be seen.
Yes. Yes. It's something my pastor would always say. Something is it's only crazy until it happens.
Thank you.
When it happens, it becomes a standard. I mean, you and I could go on several people who have literally done that. I'm gonna just name a few: Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, Kamala Harris.
Yep.
Uh, the it was a crazy idea at some point,
Yep.
but they are the standard bearers for something new that is actually changing people's conversation about certain things because they were willing to do it. That's so good. And
They were
I'm gonna
willing.
keep asking questions because
That's it.
because that's, I mean, that's such a powerful point. I mean, what are some ways do you see people actually shrinking back? Because I don't know. We're living in an era where people want. There's a lot of people that have an opinion. They got a lot of opinions about people stepping out and doing certain things. And you talked about confidence. You've been like hitting that confidence point a lot. But what are some things that you've done even in your own reaching with naysayers in your profession, with naysayers on social media? What are some of the things that you did personally to say, I'm gonna keep pushing through this and I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, I'm relentless. That's the thing that people don't get, is that I am relentless in everything I do, and that propels me forward even when I don't feel like it. I think sometimes people think that you always are up to the task and you have the energy to do it. No, I do not. But the difference between me and another person is that I will push when I don't feel like it.
Yeah, yeah,
I will keep going. That is the definition of relentless.
yeah,
Relentless means that you pursue it without distraction. You
yeah.
don't stop. You never stop. You continue to go. You may be slower, you may hop, you may leap, and then you may get your stride back. But relentlessly is just that. You got to keep going no matter
Yeah.
what. And that's the end of it. It is
Wow.
that simple. I say I've now coined it is that simple. From this point on, I literally am starting to say that at the end of all my videos that I talk.
Yes, it's
That
that
simple.
simple. Yes, yes. You need to put that on a BCI shirt. It's
It is
that
that
simple.
simple. You are so right. That's gonna be a shirt. After I get some more of those videos out, I'm gonna put the shirt out.
Yes,
That's
yes, yes, yes. And see, on the side note though, speaking of BCI, those black hoodies that you put out, the
that.
gray ones. Oh my gosh, I was so mad that I did not get one in time. I was like,
I
man,
know we gonna bring them back next winter, but we try to do
ooh.
them in seasons, man. I love those gray ones too.
I was like, this thing is fire. I know, okay, that's a whole aside, but it is that simple.
It
It is
is.
that simple. But to your point, like it goes with what you said. It's that confidence piece. It's that people believing that I can do this, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. I can actually accomplish my goals. And something that I've had to learn in the last few years, especially with education for me. Right now, I'm getting my master's. I'm almost done. Praise God. But in undergrad, something happened to me that was very interesting. Um, like it took me literally. Wait, when did I go? When did I go? I'm trying to think about it for a second. It took me like 7 or 8 years to finish my undergrad degree.
Mm.
7 or 8 years, which is crazy considering the fact that like I'm in my head, I'm like, okay, why is this becoming a problem? Like literally, I transferred schools, so that was a whole ordeal in transferring schools. Some of my credits
Yeah.
didn't transfer, so I'm like fighting with the school for like I literally fought with my alma mater for 2 or 3 years
Mm.
for two classes, two. getting rejected over and over and over again. I literally told my mom, I said, Mom, listen, I want to get this degree, but I'm having this moment where I'm like, is it worth it? Could I just, I mean, I know I'm close to the end, but is it actually worth it for me to finish? Like, I don't understand. And and also at the same time having this moment in my head where you know how we are. We get a plan. I'm gonna do this time. I'm gonna be done by this time, and I'm gonna do. And I realized in that process that like it doesn't matter when I finish. It matters that I finished.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we spend so much time losing it because we're not getting it when other people are getting it, or we're not doing the things when other people are doing it, and we miss the moment that is actually our moment because we are so busy and getting focused on how everybody else is doing what they're doing. Like, how do you encourage people? And I just want to get your wisdom on this. How are you learning to stay focused on what you're doing? Because I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, well, Jackie got X amount of followers on social media. Jackie's running this big organization that's impacting the world and impacting young Black folks. Jackie's this and Jackie's this, and they don't know what you deal with every single day when you have to get up and do what you need to do. Speak to that for me.
Yeah, man. It's life happens for everyone. I do not get to skip having chores, responsibilities, bills, family, people drama, all that stuff that you deal with. I got it too. And I think sometimes people forget that. And I'm like, no, 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 that just never goes away, but again, it's about how you manage it. And again, I'm not perfect at it, but one thing that I tell people is that I'm relentless. I
Yep.
was just working out with my trainer before this, and he was like, Jackie, I cannot say that I've ever worked with anyone like you, because no matter what I throw at you, even if you have to like literally like push yourself to the point where you can't breathe, you won't stop.
Yeah.
And that is for me what my life is. I just won't stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can get hurt, I can get stabbed, but I'm going to make it to that finish line. And
Yeah.
that is what it's about. And I think that that's a piece that people don't get, man. Like life will happen. I am still having to deal with life. I
Yeah.
got clothes I got to fold. I have two beautiful daughters,
Yeah.
like a whole thing to manage outside of my business and social media presence. But what we don't get is the fact that it requires you to be relentless. It doesn't have to be perfect, and so I think that's a part
Ooh,
that I
that's
want
key.
people to take.
Oh, that's key what you just said. You have to be relentless, but it does not have to be perfect.
No.
Oh man, that's so good.
Yeah,
Because
perfection
so
will kill people.
yes. Oh, I know it's killed me. Because there's so many things that I should have done at
Yeah,
certain times, but because I allowed this right here, what's happening between these two ears, to mess with me, I
yeah,
missed an opportunity to actually be impactful in a way that I need to be impactful because I was too busy getting hung up. Wait, well, I said that I had a 5-year plan, and my 5-year plan didn't work out how I want to. So and we get so caught up in that. Like
yeah.
we really get caught up in that. But as you said, we got to be relentless. Jackie, I need you to get some specific shirts outside of BCI. I need you to have some Jackie the Educator shirts, and on the back of it say relentless. Just, I promise you, if you need some models out there, I'll just be out there like,
Get
oh, I'm
it.
wearing a Jackie the Educator shirt. This is beyond BCI.
Man, I'm here for it. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna hold you to that, man.
but just kind of moving on with the conversation. You have obviously used your relentlessness and your tenacity and your influence to really build a lot of great relationships. What are your thoughts on the power of relationships? Because I think even as you have been accomplished, sis, you know how to leverage some relationships, and it's evident of that. So, what are some advice you would give to people about the power of being connected and the power of relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I can don't burn bridges. Bridges is my first thing. I can count on one hand how many people that I would say that I can't like talk to if a whole hand can be filled.
Mhm.
But I know for me, even with that hand, I'm
Wow.
still working on it because everybody's gonna have people in your life that you have disagreements with and you fall out with, especially if you have like close family or friends. It happens. But what I do not subscribe to is burning bridges.
Wow.
You can disagree, you can have people that fall out or do things you don't like, but don't let that be a burden or let it be something that builds bitterness in your heart. People ask me like, how do you maintain relationships with so many different influencers and stuff? I'm always just open. I don't hold things against people.
Wow.
If I held things against people when I first started BCI to now, there were people who I asked to be a part and were like, man, could you do this? And they didn't want nothing. They didn't respond. They didn't look my direction, but now they do. But if I was a person who was vindictive or bitter, then I wouldn't be able to grow because I'd be like, well, I ain't going to them because they weren't with me when I started. So
Right.
they not
Right.
no,
Right.
like bitterness will hold you back. You need to be quick to forget.
Wow. Wow.
Very, very quick to
Wow.
forgive. That's
Wow.
the biggest recipe to the success. Relationships require it.
Wow, there's so much wisdom in that.
Mhm.
Yes, be quick to forgive and forget. Like, oh man, I think if we could get people in the business world to operate that way, and in different business culture and just in general, if we get people to operate that way, we could see a lot of success. But it goes back to some of the reason why I think you started BCI is to gather people who think in that way, and they
Mhm.
realize that we can go into culture and be that way and be impactful and
Yeah.
change the paradigm of what's happening in the culture. But we have to be willing to go into those spaces and say, you know what, we're just gonna do it a little bit different. I
Mhm.
could, I could drag the people that I don't really like too much. I can, I it doesn't mean that I don't be honest about them, but I
Yeah.
also don't have to drag them, right? I can
Yeah.
use wisdom and say, okay, well, I maybe can say this a little better, or engage, or ask to understand.
Yes. That's it.
Ask to understand. I had a recent situation where literally, with all the things that was happening last year with, you know, George Floyd and these different things coming up in conversations, I had to realize that some people, to be honest, if we really want to be honest about it, it's not that some of it is, bias, racism, some of it is all those things. Those things are true. But to be honest, some of these people just literally don't know and don't understand.
That's it.
And so wisdom for me was saying, okay, wait, at least step back for a second. Understand they have a story and they have a certain experience. So start asking questions instead of assuming that they're doing a specific thing.
Mhm. Mhm. That's it.
And and seriously, even though I wasn't tight with these people, I learned a lot. I learned, and in that process, they start asking me stuff, and then I could educate.
Mhm.
I put on my lead the educator hat. I was like, please go read this. You need to read White Fragility. You need to read, the new Jim Crow. I was able to
Yeah.
create because I was went in asking questions and approached it in a way that like I didn't initially think that it was possible. So kind of, I have one more question about that concerning relationships. You talked about not burning bridges. How has that worked out in your life? Where how have you what has been the process for you in salvaging relationships?
Yeah.
Because some person may hear this and to be like, okay, well, Jackie said to, not burn bridges, not hold grudges, but I really felt that they really were hateful to me. I didn't really like what they said. How have you figured out how to approach those individuals to find healing?
Yeah. And it's again, it's a process. You don't have to do it overnight, but your heart really has to want it. Like you can't
Mm,
do it for
yeah.
strategy. It won't work
Ooh,
that
that's good.
because strategy will go against what is really needing to be done, and that's sacrifice of your ego, sacrifice of your whole like just swag, all of that. Because for me, I have sacrificed it continually, and it looks bad, it feels bad, because everybody wants to have the last word, everybody wants to get the leg up and, leave on a better note. But why though? Why? Because it's harder to feel like you aren't ahead of somebody else, especially when a relationship isn't like moving forward, when it's not
Right.
having like, mutual benefits anymore. You want to be the person who has the last word.
Yeah.
And that is what you have to give up. When you want to have like relationships that can be mended, you sometimes don't get to have the last word. You sometimes look stupid. There have been plenty of times where I felt and looked completely like a fool. Like, man, I just literally called this person and, poured out my heart to them and said this and told them that, I forgive them. And, I really just want to make sure that we're okay. And they completely looked at me like I was crazy.
Mm.
But it wasn't for them. If it's led to be done,
Yes.
if you feel that it
Yes.
needs to be done, you have to do it, because you will hold back yourself. And for me, I believe that all of the things I've accomplished now is because of that willingness to always sacrifice that in private. I've had so many people who have done me dirty, but I literally have let it
Wow.
go. And it literally has done so much more for me in the long run.
Uh, Listen, well, I'm gonna take some lessons out of your book, Jack, because he's still working on me. Because woo,
Working on us all.
I'm talking about there's some people I'm like, I know what I can say, and I know what to get them. Oh, I know dirt, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had a recent situation where I literally had to do exactly what you said. Like, wait, actually, let me get out of the way. There had been a lot of situations that has happened in, but I could put one on the board. I don't know if we tallying if I did one.
Right. No, it happens. We all got some petty in us. Even me, I'm not perfect all the time, but one thing I'm glad for is conviction, because God will literally
Yeah.
give it to me. He won't let me go. He'll be like, "Yep, so you did that, huh? So
Woo.
we just not going to deal with that." Like, it will literally be like something tapping me on my shoulder
Yeah.
continually if I don't deal with it.
Yeah.
And so just that's the thing. Conviction is what we need to pray for. God, please convict me if I've done anything that, I need to fix, anything wrong that I need to deal with,
Yeah.
and he will do it.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it
we not we not about to have because that's
is.
real. That's so real. So I'm going to
Mhm.
get to my last few questions, and once again, thank you for your time, Jackie. Um,
Absolutely.
uh, so I kind of want to know because you are building something great, and you're building something that's impacting so many people, and you're building something that is important. It's not something small. It's extremely important. So how are you feeling yourself? Like, how are you? What are you reading? What are some things that you're listening to actually grow in your own personal leadership and how you lead these organizations and your clients?
Yeah, so I think I have a lot of things that I do. I listen, I have great friends and people around me who pour, and I love to listen and get guidance from. A book that I'm still trying to finish. It's really good though. It's Think and Grow Rich,
Hmm.
Napoleon Hill. And it's really good for even people who maybe have not had the mentality ingrained in them as a child. I don't think, my parents, they were never, rich. They were like good, but I think a lot of what we're entitled to as believers is to have the wealth, like, of the wicked. Like, so we need to
Yes.
be intentional on pursuing that. And so I definitely am reading some great books like that to help me grow in that area. And again, that's a part of the process for me, is growing, to be better than I was and to be better than the generations before me. So that's a part of my thing that I do. So that's one of the books I'm currently kind of dealing with now.
Awesome. Awesome. And so my second to last question is, um, how are you paying it forward? And I want to ask you very specifically. You mentioned your girls earlier.
Mhm.
How are you paying it forward, and what kind of legacy do you want to leave for them? Because they are looking at you every single day. Like, what do you want? What type of legacy do you want to build for your girls, for them to go forward?
Yeah, I really want them. I know it's still Women History Month, and so
Well,
I I really want them to know, like, you are a woman, but you are no less. You are
right,
so powerful, and everything that is inside of you is valuable. Because I think for me, my voice growing up, I didn't necessarily think that the thoughts in my head were valuable. I knew I was smart, but I never knew I was like an innovator. Like, you can be smart as a woman, but innovators are something that I don't know if we're encouraged to be.
right.
And so I want my children to know that you can create something that never existed. And so I tell them about what I'm building, what I'm doing, and how it doesn't have a blueprint. And I think for me, that's the biggest legacy I want to leave with them, is that you ain't got to do nothing that other people have done. You can create a whole new lane.
Yeah.
Can be completely successful, and it will grow and be whatever you want it to.
Well, you listen. If I have a girl, I want them to look up to you, Jackie.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that.
but yeah, I think that that's great for you to be pushing your girls in that direction. And my last question, which I think is a fun question, what song would you use to describe yourself and why?
I always love that song. It's a hymn. I don't even know who it's by, but it just says, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know that you are God." Like, that is literally that simple. Like,
Yeah,
that is what it boils down to. Whenever I get overwhelmed, whenever I feel like it's something out of my control, that song brings me back to a place of like, wait a minute, tis so sweet. How dope is it to just trust in God
yeah,
when you don't know where to go next, And just take him at his word. He said that he's going to give you the wealth of the wicked. You're going to
yeah.
have his promises. And so that's something that you can bank on. That's what I love. I love that song.
Oh, that's so good. Well, Jackie, thank you for coming on leading. I so appreciate you, and I hope that when people listen and hear this episode or watch this episode, they'll be significantly impacted and realize that they can make a difference in the world around them. So thank you so much. I've
Thank
enjoyed this
you.
conversation. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe today on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. To get more information about me and what I'm doing, email me at scottconsultations@gmail.com or follow me on social media on Twitter and especially Instagram at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. Thank you for watching this week's episode. I really appreciate it. Much love, and let's get started.